Hey, what's going on? X here, and today we're gonna be looking at animated stories. So basically, right, there's this thing on YouTube where people animate, like it's basically story time but animated. I'm sure if you're on YouTube, you should know like a lot of this content because they've been getting lots of views, right? So I found this channel. It's called Story Animated. So basically, the thing about these channels are, I have nothing against these channels. I mean, like if it's story time, right? And the thing about this kind of channels is that most people's lives aren't really that interesting, right? So telling people to tell a story wouldn't really be interesting because most of the time that stories are going to be boring as fuck. So in order to get them interested, you have to spice some things up. The problem with this type of things is that sometimes they spice too much. For example, a mistake I did put my dad in jail for 20 years. I'm a genius born in a family of morons. A billionaire teenager made me his assistant. I have an IQ of 200 and I became one of the richest people on earth. Yeah, so basically they have stories like this where they, where they exaggerate everything. But this is what we're talking about today. I was in a millionaire suitcase and I traveled with her for months. This is the thing that I have to question. Why? Like, because this obviously can't be real. This makes no fucking sense. I mean, exaggerating something is one thing, then making a whole story like this from your head is a whole other thing. And yeah, it's getting a lot of views. It had 1.8 million views. So let's look at it real quick.
It started off as a dare, but it went too far. I was trapped in a trunk, and there was no way of escaping. They piled more and more luggage on top of the trunk. I beat on the trunk, trying to force it open. I even screamed and shouted, but it was so loud that no one heard me. By the time things quieted down, it was too late. The jet's engines began to rumble. My heart sank. We were getting ready for takeoff. I suddenly regretted this whole idea. Why did I want to meet a millionaire in the first place? Let me explain. My best friend's brother works at the airport. He lets us help out.
Actually, before I even continue, the first thing I'm going to say is, how did you not die? How did you not die? Because the other thing is, right, so for you to breathe well, you need lots of oxygen. In a box, there is not lots of oxygen. And if you got put in a millionaire suitcase, what happened to the things that were in the suitcase? And how did you put the things in the suitcase without anybody asking questions? All these questions, all these questions that I have, we're not going to question this. We're just like, oh, go along with it. All right, no problem. Let's go along with it.
In the special hangars from time to time. We carry luggage and pack the small aircrafts for a bit of money. Today, he told us we were packing a private jet that belonged to a millionaire. I've always dreamed about meeting a millionaire. My friends and I joked around with the idea of hiding in the luggage compartment. Then he dared me to do it. I don't like backing down from a challenge, so I climbed into one of the millionaire's unlocked trunks and hid in there. It was only meant to be for a minute, and then my best friend was called away. Now there was nowhere to go. I felt the aircraft take off, and then I imagined what the police of another country would do when they found me. With nothing else to do and nowhere to go, I calmed down, measured my breathing, and started counting in 1, 2, 3, out 1, 2, 3. It worked. At some point, my adrenaline-drained body got tired. I passed out. I woke up in the dark, cramped trunk. My body was aching. My phone was in my pocket. I reached for it and found that it didn't have any signal. We traveled like this for what seemed like days. But when I checked my phone, 5 hours had passed. That was when I felt the jet touch down. I heard the luggage doors open. Then people were talking in a strange language. Soon they rolled the trunk I was in down a ramp. I was loaded into a car, I think. My heart was racing. I knew that any moment they would open the trunk and find me here. But no one opened the trunk. I remember.
Is it the problem that you have? The fact that they would find you and not the fact that you're literally acting like you're kidnapped? To kidnap people, they put them in trunks. You were put in a box that was put in a trunk. I'm pretty sure that's not normal.
I remember hearing an elevator and someone grunting when they tried to pick up the trunk. Some guy sat on my trunk and farted. It was terrible.
And I have one more question. couldn't you just you probably weigh more than the box, don't you? So instead of shouting for help, why not just move around when people are moving you, Wouldn't it make a lot more sense? Because, in that case, unless you don't want to get found, then I guess that's on you then.
As the smell seeped in, I had to stifle a grunt of displeasure and hold my nerve. A few minutes later, I heard the sound of people stopped. I heard a door click shut. I waited a few minutes to make sure, then I pushed open the trunk to peek out. This time, it opened. I was in a hotel room, a very nice one. This was a
That's kind of convenient. Very, very convenient.
House suite, filled with beautiful furniture, Persian rugs, and the most breathtaking view of the city. And lucky for me, the suite was empty. I walked around and looked out the windows and figured out by the language I was seeing that I was somewhere in France. I found the hotel's Wi-Fi password and logged in. I remembered that my parents would be looking for me soon, so I sent my parents a message. I told them I was going on vacation with my best friend's family. They didn't mind. It was summer vacation, and they'd encouraged me to get away for a bit. I called my best friend. He couldn't believe my story. He begged me to tell the millionaire what had happened. I couldn't, though. If I did, my best friend's brother would lose his job. No, I was going to need another plan, and I needed it fast. As a kid, I was always great at playing hide and seek. I knew how to be quiet and steer clear of people. So far, my hiding skills had worked. With a bit of planning, I thought I could keep hiding and have a nice little holiday in the process. I decided to try this out. What did I have to lose? Now that I was in the suite, there was no need to get back into the trunk. I found all the hiding places in each room and was always ready just in case the door opened. I ordered myself room service and charged it to the room. I ate quickly and hid the evidence. I hoped that no one would notice the extra billings. I went through the millionaire's luggage.
I'm going to say something real quick. So basically, if I can rephrase this, so it's not I was in a millionaire suitcase, more like I snuck into a millionaire's penthouse and I stole from him because, she's stealing. I snuck into a millionaire's penthouse and I was so much of a stalker that I knew whenever he came in and whenever he went out. So I knew exactly when to hide in order not to get caught. Yeah, of course.
Luggage, trying to find out who she was. It was definitely a woman. She had a good fashion sense, but a weird obsession with sweets. Half of her luggage was filled with gummy bears, licorice, and other exotic candy.
Not to mention, she's also going through her luggage. Yep. Definitely nothing creepy about this at all.
I wasn't proud of what I did next. I took some money that she'd left in the hotel room. Not to spend it, but to have as a backup plan to get home. If this blew up in my face, I was going to need some cash to get me back home quickly. At 9 p.m. that night, the door opened and the millionaire came back. I couldn't believe my eyes. She was a fashion designer. I remember seeing her in different magazines. Fashion wasn't my thing, but this lady stood out. She was eccentric and colorful. She was also known for being impatient and even had a temper when it came to answering silly questions. In the photos, she always wore the most extravagant, even ridiculous outfits. Tonight, she was so exhausted that she literally flopped onto her bed and started snoring. When I was sure she wasn't going to get up, I fell asleep in the far corner of the next room. The knock on the door the next morning woke me up. I heard the millionaire fashion designer speaking to someone from the hotel. She was telling them that she didn't know what they were talking about. She didn't order any room service. She sounded irritated. My heart started beating faster. The door closed, and she started getting ready for the day. I relaxed. It was a close one. I was going to have to be more careful from now on. I spent the morning watching TV and reading the documents that she'd left behind from her meetings the day before.
Yeah, so I'm going to show you in this story for a while because she starts talking about some shit that doesn't matter. But regardless, she says something about the millionaire, goes from occasion to occasion and she follows along, she tags along, going from occasion to occasion, and finally they catch her.
Tiny closet. I knew that it was over now. My mind raced with what would happen next. Would she send me to jail once she found out I had stolen her items? I was about to apologize to her, to tell her that I was sorry for hiding out and selling her things, when she interrupted me. "My dear, what are you doing in the closet?" she said to me. "Don't be shy. Guests need to mingle." She helped me out of the closet and welcomed me to the party. She told me that there were better places to hide if I didn't want to speak to people, like the balcony because of its view of the city. I noticed the glass of wine in her hand and I felt relieved. The alcohol was making her a lot friendlier, even to someone she'd found in the closet. There must have been 100 people there. I don't think she knew more than 5 of the guests, and she thought that I was one of them. I spent most of the night talking to the millionaire fashion designer. It turns out she was a pretty cool person. We actually had a few things in common. In fact,
pretty cool person, hides in the closets, steals her things, made her pay bills that she did by herself. But yeah.
we were both from the same small town, the home that she grew up in. She told me how boring most of these parties were, but she was really enjoying this one for a change. We spoke about what she planned next in her business and how she'd become so successful. We danced, laughed, and had an amazing time. I met some very interesting people at this party. I also ate a lot of candy, and eventually I fell asleep on the couch. It felt great not having to hide for the first time in almost a month. I woke up the next morning on the couch. There was a cleaning crew tidying up the mess from the night before. Most of the guests had left. Some were still sleeping on the couches in the suite. The millionaire was dressed and getting ready to leave. She saw me and thanked me for the company last night. She told me that the next time she was home, she'd stop by and visit me. She called the reception, and a few minutes later, 5 men were carrying her luggage out of the room. They took everything, including my traveling trunk. I tried to keep cool and smile, but seeing them carrying out my travel trunk made me panic. I shouted for them to stop. The millionaire looked at me strangely. I smiled at her and told her that it looked like something that belonged to me. Then she stopped and turned back to me. She asked me if I had seen anyone wearing a pair of rainbow stilettos. By the way she looked at me, I was sure she knew that I'd taken them. I took a deep breath and shook my head. She paused for a moment and then shrugged. She said it was one of the reasons she didn't like these parties. So many strangers would take little souvenirs home with them. They were her favorite pair of heels. She shook her head and gave me a goodbye wave. I waved back and watched her leave. Standing there in the middle of this empty hotel room, a knot was forming in my stomach. The knot was still there as I walked out of the hotel. I didn't need to sneak around anymore. I felt great about that, but at the same time, my holiday was officially over. The good news was that I wasn't far from home. I was at least on the same continent. I took 4 trains and 3 buses to get back. It took me another week of traveling. Eventually, I arrived. Standing outside my house, I realized how much I actually enjoyed all the traveling. My best friend was relieved to see me. He told me how much money we'd made from auctioning the millionaire's stuff. I couldn't believe it. We were almost millionaires now too, and I had an idea then. One that my
Yo, what the fuck? She already mailed back the millionaire stuff and they sold it already.
Best friend liked. About a month later, my doorbell rang. It was the fashion designer. I couldn't believe it. She told me that she remembered me telling her where I lived. She invited me out to lunch. I'll be honest, it was kind of strange to be speaking to her again. Strange because I felt kind of guilty for everything I had done. But at the same time, it was fun. We really got along quite well. She told me about her recent trips and the new clothing line that she was launching. She brought up the rainbow stilettos again, telling me how hard it was to find a good pair of shoes. I tried not to look guilty, but I think it showed. The fashion designer told me about how traveling was becoming more and more of a pain because of all the luggage that she carried around with her. So many people were always giving her things that she didn't want, but she didn't want to hurt their feelings by refusing the gifts. And then I had the idea, a way that we could work together. My business idea was simple. I would take some of the items that she didn't need anymore and auction them online. She listened carefully and nodded. She liked the idea. All she asked was that some of the money be donated to her favorite charity. I agreed. Together with my best friend's help, we began auctioning off her unwanted items. Over the next few months, she sent me all sorts of clothing, shoes, and jewelry, along with photos of her wearing these items. My best friend loaded them up onto the online auction site. The lucky winners received a box, along with a real letter from the fashion designer, thanking them for their purchase. What started off as stealing turned into a legal business for my best friend and I. Within a year, we were millionaires. And best of all was that we now had a...
Hold up. So, what about the part where... what about the part where you stole from her and sold her things and literally acted like the most creepy motherfucker on earth for months? Did that just not happen, or did that just not happen?
A millionaire business partner. There was something that bothered me though. The rainbow stilettos. I still felt guilty about them. So I tracked down the original buyer. By now, we had the money to buy back the rainbow stilettos from her for twice what she paid for them. She agreed to sell them. You should have seen the fashion designer's face when I gave her a box with the rainbow stilettos. She was so happy. She asked me how I found them. I told her it didn't matter. She paused, closed the box, and pushed it back to me. Keep the shoes. Just remember to send a fraction of the money that you gain from the auction of these to the charity. My gaze dropped, and I shook my head furiously as she sipped her coffee. Did she even know what I had gone through to get these silly shoes back? We sat in silence.
Yes, she's the one at fault here.
Wondering how much she knew. Then I relaxed. It didn't matter now. As I looked back at the past few months, I realized how crazy this all was. From being locked in a trunk to being business partners with a millionaire fashion designer. Sometimes life takes you on a wild ride. All you have to do is hold on tight and see where it goes.
This looks like some shit that Netflix would come up with, because it's definitely not a normal story. It's definitely some shit that someone would have to think up. I can't even say that this is real. This is obviously not real, but yeah, this is definitely a cool story. Has a happy ending for, the person who stole everything. The person who stole, who was, being creepy again, and, other things. But the person was being a full-on thief. But yeah, in other words, it all worked out for everybody, Everybody was happy. Everybody was happy. But oh well, like I said, fucking retarded stories, and yeah, there are lots more on this channel. I'll probably come back to this channel later in the future. But yeah, if you like the video, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
You don't know these streets like we do. Break your body into pieces. Pull up on that shit, on that G shit. I'ma leave you down